Hello everyone, David here and welcome to the 2024 MixbusTv Plugin Awards. In these videos I'll show you my favorite, most used plugins, the ones that I think are most innovative, divided by categories, so we'll have compressors, mastering plugins, EQs, delay, and so on. I'll keep the list short and sweet without audio example because for most plugins we have a dedicated review here on the channel, so if you're interested in hearing one in particular, search it on the channel and you will find the in-depth review. But I will also tell you why I like them, why I think they're special, and what I use them more often for. In this one, Best EQs 2024. Let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to MixbusTv. Hope you guys are having a great day. Before we start, check the info box down below for free plugin special discounts and offers, and of course all the links to the plugins that we're going to see in this video, including some of them with Black Friday deals. If you want to book mix and mastering with me, go to MixbusTv.com. In there you can also find all the mix and mastering courses, book private lessons, mix consultations, and a lot more. If you want to access the many mix and mastering exclusive videos here on YouTube, click the join button, become a MixbusTv member, get all the perks, and if the videos are helping you, please consider using the super thanks or grab some merch. Let's go. All right, first one, this is kind of a qualifier because just based on number of instances, my most used EQ is Console 1 SSL 4K. If you know me, if you follow the channel, you know that I've been using Console 1 by Softube as my main mixing system since it came out. And so I open one of these channels on every track, on every mix. And my default channel strip is the SSL 4K with a couple of tweaks. Like for example, I often change the input saturation, I change the drive, I have a second compressor ready to go. But my bread and butter first stage of compression and EQ is always the 4K. First plugin on the list is Auto-Tune Vocal EQ. I love this plugin for corrective EQ, specifically the track function. So this plugin will follow the resonances, which on vocals change all the time, and attenuate them. As you can see here, I have a dedicated video for this one on the channel if you want to hear it in action. It saves me a ton of time and it saved more badly recorded vocals that I can count. Input what type of vocals are you working with, soprano, alto, tenor, low male, instrument, or bass. I use this one also on bass a lot, even though it's called vocal EQ. This is for me a utility EQ as opposed to an enhancing EQ, but what utility? It saves me so much time. Next one is a new entry just released not long ago, and I already got so many requests from you guys to review this thing. We'll see if we can make it happen. It's Black Box long awaited HGQ. This is a 3-band parametric EQ with saturation for each band that you can turn on and off. It also has for each band alternative saturation, which is a more aggressive stage of saturation. So this quickly became, waiting for the hardware to get here, one of my favorite color EQ, obviously enhancing EQ. You can look at this almost like a multi-band saturator with EQ capabilities. This is how color can be, because you can also run it without saturation and it's transparent, but this thing is designed brilliantly, especially with the parallel function for each band, so you can run the EQ saturation in parallel, which makes it a whole different beast. Next one still goes strong. I featured this before, but nothing changed. The Softube Curve Bender is still one of my favorite color EQs, especially because you can really focus on the high mid-range and top end of the signal, because these 3 bands, you can see they're called Presence 1 and 2, and treble, so it's really focused on the money range, right? This is one EQ that I like for mastering. I like for electric guitar. This is a killer EQ for electric guitar. I love the color. You can use it in mid-side, and regardless the fact that it's kind of mid-range top end focus, the one low band that we have is massive. Like I said, more common uses for me is a little bit of color either on groups, on the full mix, love it on electric guitars, love it on everything that it needs energy in the mid-range. I featured this one in the plugins that sound like analog already, but I cannot make a best EQ plugin list without including Michelangelo. So I'm just gonna repeat myself here again. If you watch that video, Tone Project, Michelangelo did simply something special with this EQ. It is again another colored EQ. There's nothing I don't like about this equalizer. All the stages of saturation sound great, and regardless that, I think the strength of this EQ is also in the original handy amp design. So how musical these broad 4 bands of EQ are. They're really well tuned. Plus in the plugin we have a mid-side for each band and transient body, so sustain and transient, right? So we can decide where to put the processing. Again, not only I featured this one in a recent video, but I have a dedicated review of this one. We presented the premiere here on the channel. Dynamic EQ, this is a must-have. The one plugin that everybody follow, because when this one came out, Eventide Split EQ, it was a revolution, and it still is. This is the first plugin that I'm aware of, or at least that made this technology so popular and known, that allows you to EQ individually the transient portion of the signal from the sustain portion of the signal. They call it tonal, right? I can't even name how many mixes that I was sent to master from my client I was able to save and or enhance just with this EQ. At this point, when this EQ came out, you could pull up a bass that was too low from a mix without touching the kick. You could bring up a snare without touching the vocals. You could smooth out guitars without touching the snare. This thing still is an absolutely impressive piece of software. The key for me is always on the settings at the bottom. So separation, decay, and smooth. Those setting those the right way, depending on the tracks that you use, the material that you use, are key to get the best out of this EQ. And it can do things that were absolutely unthinkable before Eventide released Split EQ. So this is still there. I still use it in mastering all the time. I use it on any complex material. It could be an acoustic guitar that is like a little too pokey, and the transient, we attenuate the transient on the high mid range, or a bass that needs a little more sustain, or sometimes I get sent printed sim patches that have complex sounds as a deharsher on vocals. This thing has so many freaking uses, it's not even fair. So it had to be here, Split EQ. The next one is probably one of the best bang for the buck. Like many of the 60 series of Mac DSP, I picked the Ultimate EQ because this is the EQ video, but you could pick the 650, the Ultimate CS, which stands for channel strip. And in here, not only you have 10 different EQ modules, you can see them all here in one plugin, but you have some unique type of EQ. Like for example, this one is like reminiscent of an LA2A EQ, which doesn't exist, right? Or this would be if an LA3A was an EQ. Same for the 670 based on the Fairchild, right? So this is really a brilliant plugin that has both utility EQs in there, color EQs, filters, and more. I really love this. Next one is a heavy hitter. So the A25, the original A25 has always been one of my favorite equalizers. Now I have the IGS A25, which I arguably like even more because it's got all stepped switches, mastering grade, everything is recallable, perfect matching, and the Acoustica Audio Erin is the digital version of this EQ that is right here in my rack, and I absolutely adore it. And while there are of course differences, I'm not gonna say that it sounds the same, this does have the A25 vibe. I wish it was a little more responsive. That's the one thing that I'm not a fan of. When I move the controls, it takes a second or half a second to happen, but it's kind of a trade-off for the quality and the technology that they use. Erin is one of my favorite plugins Acoustica has. Next one, I guess we could consider old but gold, because this one came out a long time ago, but you know already if you watched especially the Best Compressors video, I'm an absolute fan of the Summit line of soft tube. Both processors, the compressor and the EQ, sound so smooth and amazing, and I think this EQ is really overlooked and underrated. I absolutely love the top end on this thing. Is smooth, the bottom is big and rich and simple for bands, and I think actually the original units were underrated. This is a broad stroke EQ that I often use on vocals. I love it on synths, even brass, everything orchestral, pads. Love this EQ. We got the last one, Smart EQ4. This is one of the best, in my opinion. Smart EQ was arguably, I think, the first one, and I still think that it's great plugin. It's a great EQ. The main use for me of this one is kind of, I want to say, recovering when I get a mix from a client and maybe the material is not recorded that well. Before any other processing, I run this one and it puts me in a much better starting point for me to then start mixing. So eliminating resonances, rebalance things that are really messed up. This is my main use. That doesn't mean that you cannot use this EQ as a regular EQ, because it's great. It's got so many controls and so many extra functions that you can use. Plus you have a group function. So for me, this comes really handy in high track count mixes when, for example, I get full-blown track out of background vocals, right? There are like 20 tracks or 30 tracks. Or if I have layers of synths that are similar sounds, but maybe different octaves or different variations of the same. This with the group function really saved me a lot of time when I want to work on the group together, and maybe that will end up being a folder of like pads and there are like 10 in them. This really takes care of build-ups. Like for example, if you have a bunch of synths that they all hit like 200, or a stack of background vocals and they all be recorded with a harsh mic, and so you take care of that range. Last one in the list for this video is audio thing type A. It's not really an EQ if we want to argue, it's an exciter, but we won't have an exciter category. So the closest thing would be this. And I do use this basically as an EQ. It's mostly exactly how it is right now. So I very rarely use the bands 1 and 2. They're a bit too low. I use this for brightness, right? Whether in parallel, in which case I tend to boost the bands a little more and then follow with a compressor that keeps them down and keeps them controlled. This is a great way to add sparkle and intelligibility to vocals or acoustic guitars or anything that lives in the mid-range, because if you go lower in frequency and use the first and second band as well, that's mid-range area. So anything that needs a little more energy, a little more intelligibility, you can use it for that. And it really is an alternative to straight EQ, which is a concept that if you follow me, you know it's not new, right? Using saturation, some sort of saturation as an alternative to EQ. I've been saying this for years and years and years, and now we have a whole class of processors and plugins like the Black Box EQ Q, the Drummer 1971 and others, because we learned that we can save headroom and do something that in some cases works even better than straight up EQ. Audio Thing did an amazing job with this one. There are other plugins that are either modeling the same thing or things alike, and this one is definitely the best for me. The second would be the SPL Vitalizer. I really like that one as well. I actually like that one also for the low end. Let's open it up. The bass control that goes from soft to tight, that can sound really, really good on some material. There are a couple of things that I really don't like about this plugin. One, they need to make the interface bigger or resizable. And two is just the Vitalizer. I actually had the hardware of this one. When you turn the process knob up, it also affects the mid-high tune, which I'm not really a big fan. That's usually why I put it all the way down. And so there's always some kind of compromise because how the controls are laid out. But again, Tape A is our officially last for this list. This is it for the video. I want to know which one are your favorite EQ plugins in the comments down below. If you like the video, please don't forget to leave a like. If you want to book mix and mastering with me, go to MixbusTv.com. In there you will also find all the mix and mastering courses. You can book private lessons, mix consultations, and a lot more. If you want to access the many mix and mastering members only videos here on YouTube, click the join button, become a MixbusTv member, get all the perks. And if the videos are helping you, please consider using the super thanks or get some merch. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay safe. See you next time.